why a woman's body to her is equivalent to a man's money to him. You know, the value that a woman puts in her body and the value that a man puts in his money, right? It's the same thing. Now let me elaborate on that, right? So if you look back throughout history, one of the oldest forms of relationship between men and women, an exchange between men and women, was women selling their bodies for money and men paying money for a woman's body, right? That's one of the oldest professions. I didn't make it. I didn't invent it. I'm just born into the environment that is what it is, right? And let's just focus on that right there, right? There has to be, you know, a reason and a dollar value that a man pays for the woman's body and a woman sets the price tag for her body, right? So that means that, you know, a woman's body to her is a certain value, the same as a man's money is to him a certain value, right? And that's the most shallow end of the relationship and exchange between men and women that they make, right? The most shallow agreement that men and women can make with each other, right? Now, let's take it a little deeper than that, right? Let's say there's emotions involved, right? Let's say it's a dating, right? You're dating. And from my perspective, I like to believe that one of the woman's biggest fears is getting like sexually assaulted on a first date, right? In the same way with the man, him getting finessed just for a free meal on a first date, you know, because the intention behind, you know, the date is to, hey, I want to get to know you, right? I want to know what you're about, right? But we never know people's true intentions until the situation shows itself, reveals itself, right? And, you know, at that waist steep level, right, that dating level, you know, by default, I feel like, at least it's more, you know, common these days, is, you know, men fear being used as a free meal, fear being used just for their resources, what they can do, instead of who they are as people, as human beings, as complex creatures, right? And I feel like the same goes with women, right? Their default fear is being, you know, too vulnerable with their bodies, and not being seen as a human being, not being seen as, you know, someone with depth and character and substance, right? Just being used as a piece of meat, you know? And again, I feel like with that same frame of thought of a woman's value in her body and a man's value in his money, right? Those hold true, right? Now, let's take it even further. Let's take it deeper than that, right? And I'm going to compare this because this happened like such close proximity, right? So there's abortion law in Texas, right? To the extent of which it is, it's egregious. It's insane, right? But again, right, let's focus on, it's infringing on a woman's body, right? Forcing a woman to have a child conceived in a way that was immoral, right? Now, let's focus on that storyline, right? Forced to have a child, conceived in a way that's immoral, right? Now let's rewrite the story in a way that's positive, right? Let's say she was in a relationship with a man that she's in love with, she's married to, they're trying to start a family. They conceive a kid, she has a kid, right? In that story, it's a green light. It's cool. There's nothing wrong. Ain't nobody was violated. It was a consensual agreement, right? But going back to the original story, right? It's the setup, right? The setup mechanism that led to the child being conceived. That's the problem, right? The setup is a problem. And then also on top of that, being forced to carry that child to term is a problem, right? Now, how can we communicate that and understand that in a dialect that's true to men, right? Because for women, it's their body, and for men, it's their money, right? And when you look at it, the PJ Washington situation and the Brittany Renner situation, right? So here's a 29-year-old woman who groomed an 18-year-old kid to get married, have kids, or have a child, and then 2 weeks later, after the kid was born, file for a divorce behind his back, right? Now, he has to pay $200,000 a month on child support, right? Paying child support isn't the problem, right? I put this poll up on my Instagram to all the men, and I asked the men, I said, hey, if you weren't forced to pay child support, would you still pay child support? Nearly all the men said yes, right? So child support and paying child support is not the problem, right? Again, it's the setup, right? She groomed him, she set him up, and then she filed for divorce to collect that. So he's forced to pay child support in a way that was set up immorally, right? So if you take a step back, right, now that you have all this information, right, again, it's the setup on the neck deep end, right? The setup for both, men and women, and then being forced to for men and women, right? Yes, the language is different, right? The experiences are different experiences, but that doesn't mean that the emotion felt from those experiences are any different, right? And I personally believe that if women can understand that, just like there's men preying on women for sex, that there's women there's women preying on men for money, right? And that's the same, predator prey mentality that, both men and women can have, right? So it's like, ladies, it's like, if you're upset about male predators on women for sex, you should be just as upset of female predators on men for money, right? That's how it is. It just makes sense that way for me, right? And when you can understand that pain that you have, and understand that that's what's being communicated on the other end with this other language, then you'll be in a position where you say, hey, I feel you, right? And same with men, right? Men, if you're tired or if you're scared of, having or being preyed on by these predator women only out for your money, understand that there's men that are preying on women for sex. And just as painful as fearful as that is for you, it's just as painful and fearful for women, right? So I say all that to say this, is that we really don't live different lives. We don't live different emotions. We all face and deal the same emotions. Our emotions are, the journey to our emotions are different, but they're real nonetheless. And I feel like I wholeheartedly believe that if we could come together as both men and women, and men fought for women's rights more than women fought for their rights, and women fought for men's rights more than men fight for their rights, then we'll get to a conclusion, right? And the reason I say that women should fight more for men's rights than their own rights is because y'all been, with feminism, you guys have spent 60 years trying to, legalize abortion, right? And then not have that conversation anymore, right? 60, 70 years. And that's still topic of conversation, right? So it could mean one of two things. Either society really is that messed up, or maybe y'all need to play the game differently, right? Because maybe the way y'all playing it just ain't working, right? And I feel the same way for men, right? That if we were to play the game where we fought for men or women's rights, right, that it would bring us together as people. But women really need to step up to the plate, because right now as much as governmental power men have, is the same amount of cultural power women have. So with that being said, you know, yeah, that's my 2 cents on this, and I'm gonna keep coming back with this dichotomy, with these types of dichotomies to kind of bridge the gap between the masculine and feminine struggles and really bring people together, because at the end of the day, we don't live different lives, we just live them differently.